Hey everybody, my name is Nick and I run District North. Sorry this video took me so long to upload. I apologize. I had a couple of technical issues and just didn't have the time and bandwidth to do it. But it's up now. It's a balmy about 9 degrees outside in northern New Hampshire. But I hope you like it. It's about geo patterns. And I got an email from someone that said, hey, can you show me how to do these? And I thought it'd make a fun little video. So I hope you like it. Let's dive in, and I'll see you at the end. Okay, so now that we're in Illustrator, don't worry too much about what the size of the document is or anything like that. I just created this. I think it was just a regular template. Ideally, you can use a bunch of different ways to create these kind of patterns, and you could use the actual system's performance. The Adobe Illustrator has some really great powerful tools when it comes to creating perfect geometric angles, and you can use those things. I'm going to show you the most basic way of doing it, which is really, really simple. And I have nothing that I'm coming from. This is a blank space. I don't have any other ideas in my head. I'm just going to start creating, and you're going to follow along with me. So usually what I start with is a circle. And what I like to do is to line everything to artboard. And this way, when I need to make sure that something is the same distance from this way to this way, or let's say from horizontal, group them. I'm going to show you what that means in a second. So let's say we start with a circle, and I'm going to align it to the artboard. And let's say I want to create little circles in here, and you can do this a few different ways, but I'm going to show you one way that's fun, which is let's create another circle like this, and I'm going to use a couple different methods. And one is to block out certain areas. You want to fill them with white. So if you go over here, you can see that this is white and this is black for the stroke. Sometimes you're going to want to have it go to be see-through or pass through it, and you're going to want to hit this little X there, and it'll show you this, and this will come later on in the technique. But right now I want to kind of break up this circle with these extra points. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And again, this is where really kind of understanding the alignment is going to help a lot. I do a lot of this stuff just by eye, and I don't use the objects palette open pretty much the whole time, or at least when I do it, that's what I do. So I use this constantly to make sure, even if I'm doing logo designs, make sure everything's nice and clean. But when you're doing this geometric type work, you want to make sure that everything's on point. So now that we have this, I want these points to be pretty much right where they are in here. That way I can take this whole thing, and this is where the magic happens. Slide it on down. So you're going to hit Option Shift and drag it down, and it'll duplicate it for you down to the bottom. And what I like to do is group these two. So if you hit Command G, it'll group them, and then now they're grouped together. And what you can do is you can actually select all of this, and just to make sure that these two are exactly at the same distance and that this whole thing will work, is just hit the Align to the center and align that way. And that way you know that these distances are perfect. So now if you select both of these, and you can hit Command C, Command F, which copies in front, and then hit R on your keyboard, you can rotate it on this whole thing. And if you hold down Shift while you're rotating it, it'll rotate it exactly a 90-degree angle. So now you have these kind of 2 points in here, which I kind of like. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm actually going to take my pen tool, I'm going to make a line, and I'm going to connect them with those. The great thing about having smart grids turned on, and if you don't know what that is, you can go up here to excuse me, View, and go down to Smart Grids and make sure it's clicked on. It is Command U if you'd like to turn it on without doing that. The nice thing about it is it basically snaps to it, and it'll snap to certain areas, and that's nice to know. But I come from using Illustrator for 10 years, and we didn't always have smart grids. So if you don't have it using an older version, it is nice to know exactly where it is if to know how to do it without using smart grids. Excuse me. So now that we have that line in there, I kind of dig that, and I'm going to copy and paste and do the same thing in front and rotate and do the same thing over here. I kind of don't like that this is a sharp edge here. So what I want to actually do is copy in front and I'm going to create another little loop icon for in front of that, X in front, and use the eyedropper to match the exact same stroke, and there we go. I kind of dig the way that that looks, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to slide this over here. Boom. Copy in front. I do this a lot, so when I start going, I'm just let you know that I'm doing it really quickly because I do it a lot. But I'm going to group all of these together, and you'll notice that I'll do that a lot, and it just comes from years and years of like knowing that certain things need to be grouped together. And what I want to do is copy in front again. So Command C, Command F, rotate by hitting the R command, sliding over, and boom, we have this guy here. So now we're starting to get into some cool little spaces. I like the shapes here that are coming out. But let's add some more dimensionality. So I'm going to grab a square, and I kind of want to line it up to where this ends and this is. So this is again where the smart guides come in, and it shows me exactly where these angles are hitting. And I'm just going to drag, holding shift and sliding it out till I hit exactly where I need to be. Now, I'm not worrying too much about a lot of this stuff, and this is again where these had fills in, and it might be more beneficial just so you can get a better idea of what's going on. Let me make a full background, and I'll change the color a bit. So let's name this layer background, and we're gonna make this let's just do a light color. Take the stroke off that back. And so now you see what I mean. If let's say I hide that, I'm filling these in with white, and there is a reason I'm doing that. And you can always come back and change these things, but I like to do it while I'm building these out. So let's say this is the this is what we're going for, and we just want to we're realistically only going to be using the strokes out of these, but it really becomes helpful when you start layering on top of these. When you start layering, and if you're looking at this from you know, if you could somehow take this two-dimensional design and flip it so it's on a flat surface, and we're looking at it, you know, in layers, you know, this is the, you know, this circle that we put down first, and then these little circles are on this layer, and then this layer is on this one. And when you start doing that, you start going to see, you know, why it's beneficial to have a fill in some of these. But now I'm going to show you what we're going to do without a fill. So let's go ahead and bring that square back, and we're going to do the same thing. Align, align. And you want to periodically do this to make sure everything's perfect. And I like to use thin lines when I'm doing these. Obviously, you can adjust the stroke later by just selecting this stroke, and because this is more. So let's say you wanted to change all the strokes that have the same stroke here. You're just going to go to select, same, and you can actually select either, same fill in stroke, which I have a command for, or you can just select, you know, stroke weight, stroke color, opacity. There's actually quite a bit of things that you can select. You can even select shape. So we're just going to go with stroke color, and it's going to select everything in there. And the nice thing about this is, let's say we wanted to bump that stroke up just a hair, just one more, maybe make it a little bit thicker, a little bit more easier to see, and that's all. That's all you have to do. It's not a difficult thing to do, and this is why I don't like destroying when I'm building on a first layer. So you want to make sure that you're not you know, expanding this stuff out while you're working, because it really is helpful when you comes back and maybe there's edits that you'll have to do, or maybe it's for a client's, you know, illustration or a t-shirt or something like that. You want to make sure that you always have these kind of unedited versions. Right. So I think what I'm going to do is actually rotate this. So if with the square highlighted, you'll hit R and rotate. And I like that a little bit more. And I'm actually going to send this all the way to the back because I want it behind it. And copy in front. So now we're getting kind of some interesting shapes. I don't personally love all the intersections here, so I'm actually going to just try some stuff. So basically what I did there is I selected both squares here, and then if you hit S on your keyboard, it'll bring up the scale, and as long as this center point is exactly in the center, when you drag outside of this by holding shift, you can make these go wherever you want inside of that. And this is extremely helpful when you're doing these types of things. So I'm digging that a little bit more, and I think what I'm going to do, just because it is in back, is I'm going to fill it out. I do like to use, I'll toggle this on and off every once in a while just so you can see, but I like to use a white background because I know that that's what it's going to be looking like at the end, but I just wanted to kind of illustrate that for you. So I'm liking these kind of sectors in here. They're looking kind of neat. I'm going to copy in front this square, and then you'll see me do that a lot too, is X and then Command F, and that brings it all the way to the front. And again, just to double check that you're making sure that everything that you're doing is on the same, you can do the select same, and select same, fill and stroke, and it should select everything in there. And then if you hit Command 3, it'll disappear everything. And that way, if you hit Command Y and you go to an outline preview mode, there's nothing in there. So if you hit Command Y back, and that gives you just an outline, and then you can bring those back by hitting Command 3, or sorry, Option Shift Command 3. All right, and then and again, I'm not really trying to explain everything to you about what I'm doing. I think most people that are probably using these know a little bit about Illustrator, or at least enough to kind of get what I'm saying. And do you see how I'm basically using the angles to themselves? Now, if you were using Illustrator and you were thinking, man, it's really hard to complicate it and make all these little angles, use the pen tool, you're cutting this in, and this is a huge reason why we fill these in, is because we can kind of make it seem like we sat there with the pen tool and cut all this out to someone who doesn't use Illustrator or someone who doesn't understand graphic design. It kind of can be really beneficial to just do this stuff really quickly. And I want people to understand that it doesn't have to be as complicated as you make it seem a lot of times. But again, just holding shift, making sure everything's aligned, X in front, doing the same thing, making sure it's the same. I'm going to give it a little bit more space there. And again, you can scale, you can set these to scale exactly at the same. I just don't have it on, and I prefer to kind of eyedrop in there. Just sometimes it's a little bit easier for me. And like I said, I've been using it for a long time. It's sometimes a little bit hard to teach an old dog new tricks. So I try to keep up to date with everything, but sometimes little things fall behind. So right now I'm just seeing if I want to have another angle in here, and I kind of don't. I like kind of the outside look of this. Alright, so I'm kind of digging this base right now. I kind of want to add some more like highlighted details. So I'm thinking what I'm going to do is go ahead and take your pen tool, and I'm just going to make a little like slice like this. And if you select this little guy, we'll call him Stan, little line. If you take Stan here and you go up to your brushes, you're going to want to create a new brush. And that's pretty easy to do, just click your little new icon there. And you're going to want to find Pattern Brush. So if you select that, hit OK. And it's going to show you all these different options in here. Realistically, what we want is to kind of create these lines going all the way around that circle. But these are way too close. So the great thing about it is all these different things that you can change. And right now the scale is perfect. That size is what I want. And you can adjust that scale if you wanted to in here. And you can adjust this after we do this. You can take a look, and if you don't like it, you can do things. But I'm just going to guess. That looks okay. So I keep most of this stuff. The stretch to fit is perfectly fine. And hit OK. So now you have a brush in here that works right there. You're going to zoom back out, and we can actually delete this now. We don't need it anymore. Select this circle, and I'm going to copy in front, and then I'm going to hit scale again. So hit S, and then I'm going to slide this while holding shift down just a little bit smaller, and then come up here, and while this circle is selected, hitting your brush, and boom. We have a whole nother subset of like things that the computer just did for us. We didn't have to sit there and draw each individual one. And some people might use this all the time and are like, ugh, I use it all the time. You don't need to tell me. Perfectly fine. This video might not be for you. But there are people that don't, and this comes really in handy when you're doing a lot of work like this. And the nice thing about this is you can do a bunch of different things. It's not just, you know, lines like this. I'll show you another technique. Let's say we wanted to add some extra bumps in here or maybe on the backside. All we got to do is X this out, paste behind, scale again by hitting S on the keyboard and dragging up. And now we have like this extra bumps going around on this side, which looks kind of neat. It's not really the effect I'm going for right now, but you know, you can do any shape you want. If you want to do circles, if you want to do triangles. I really try to keep these shapes that I use to a minimum, just because I think geometrically it makes a lot more sense to use shapes that kind of work together. So to adjust this, we're just going to select this, you know, what we already currently have, and double click in here, and it brings up your palette of options again. And let's say that fixed wasn't enough. Maybe we want to increase that fixed and give a little bit more space in there. And we can just move it up a little bit. Maybe that's a little bit nicer. And we're going to want to apply that to the stroke and zoom out. And I like that a little bit more, giving them a little bit more breadth. You know, a little bit more white space in between. And we can adjust this just by rotating it. If you hit R on your keyboard, you can rotate, and you can see they're only moving a little bit, but you can rotate them around. And again, you could do this and make it perfect if you wanted to. I'm not going to sit there and try to make it absolutely perfect. It's very easy to do calculations that way, and if you want to take a geometry class, go right ahead. I'm not going to stop you. But I just want to keep it simple for everyone. So yeah, we have this cool little shape. I like it. It's looking pretty neat, but we want to keep going, right? We want to impress clients. It's not about just doing things for the fun of it. So we're gonna do these things that, you know, are just adding extra. Yeah. Oops. I mean, I actually don't really love that. But I think it's a little overpowering. But if let's say you did like this and you want to kind of decrease the power of the outside lines here, you can actually adjust the stroke. And this is again another reason why it's nice to keep things in stroke mode, as I like to say. It's because you can adjust really quickly. And you know, I mean, Illustrator is getting more and more powerful, so it's starting to recognize shapes and all that fun stuff. But again, if you're using an older version, you won't have any of those capabilities. So I don't love that, so I'm going to delete it. But I do like this shape. And let's see what else we can do to use that technique. Let's see what other shape you can use. And the nice thing is, you can always use different shapes for different things. So let's say we're using circles and squares so far, but let's come up, let's use the polygon and see what we can make. And the nice thing about the polygon is you can adjust everything you need. So if you have it selected and double click on your artboard, you can select the sides and the radius right in here. And you can adjust this whenever you want, but it's nice to know that you can increase sides if you want, or change it however you'd like. So I'm going to keep it the same. Again, we're going to make sure it's centered on the artboard. I'm going to slide it out. And this is going to give us some different shapes. And again, I'm going to copy in front of here. And we're going to make sure it's the same size. And now we're getting some like different angles. You know, instead of just perfect 90-degree squares and then rotated kind of, you know, diamonds, we're getting these kind of different angles that are creating these other shapes. And that can come in handy when you're doing this type of work. I'm going to copy in front and then rotate this around to create even more, you know, more of these little kind of fun different shapes in here. And you can play around with this. These are filled, but let's say you wanted to make these see-through. Just go ahead and take away the fill, and that creates even more lines. I think what I'd actually do if I wanted to keep it this way is probably bring down the stroke a little bit so it gives a little dimensionality. And again, this all comes to whatever your personal preferences are. We've done so much in such a little bit of time, but it looks like it's a very complicated piece, and that's ideally what you want. Sometimes you want to do really simple things, I'm not knocking anybody for doing simple stuff. Sometimes it's even harder to do simple things than it is to do really complicated things. So again, we're going to make sure that all these are the same. Eyedropper, boop. And whoops. So let's say everything needs to be 3, and those aren't. And sometimes this happens just because you adjust things, and if you don't have the scale to adjust, it'll just change it for whatever you need. And it's an easy fix. It's not a big deal. So I'm liking this. I'm going to copy behind this square, and I want to kind of bring some dimensionality to these little extra spots. This back. And I think what I'm going to do is increase this just a scooch. I want it to actually feel kind of like a glitch, because sometimes you can make these look perfect, you know, and I don't love that always. You know, I like when you're looking at something like it's constructed and a little bit deconstructed at the same time, but still a cohesive unit. So I'm liking the way that looks. I'm gonna rotate that and see if I like it going that way too, but nah. I want to keep this kind of within my artboard, and I don't want to go outside of that. But I think there needs to be something extra in here too. So one technique you can do is use clipping masks to kind of create this effect. So what we're gonna do is create a line. So hit P or go over your palette and grab your pen, and we're gonna make a line. Copy in front, rotate, and you can do this a bunch of different ways. One way to do it is to copy in front and rotate, and then you can actually duplicate from here and do this. That's one way to kind of duplicate those into a circle, and then slide it over here and make it a little bit bigger. Everything's on the same point. And I'm just using my arrow keys. And I'm going to group all that, send it back. And what I want to do is use this as my clipping mask. So what I like to do is to copy in front this shape. So hit Command C, Command F. Then while this is selected, select this other shape that we grouped together, and then hit Command 7. And what that does is it creates a clipping mask with that shape. And now you have it inside of there. And that shape is all the way around. So all you have to do is select. I like to use the group select arrow, which is the white arrow with the little plus, and then slide it while holding Option Shift over to this side. And then while it's selected, hit Shift, double click there, and then slide it on down to here. And those all points are now inside of that. And the nice thing about this is, again, we haven't really destroyed anything. It's just a clipping mask. If you don't like it, you can select it, take it away. Or if you want to adjust just these, you can select them within here. And let's say you want to scale them up. So you hit scale. Let's say you want to pull them away. Maybe that's more cool for you. Or let's say you want to make them even bigger. So we can scale these individually like that. And again, there you go. And I actually kind of like that a little bit more. So we're gonna scale those. And you can do this a number of different ways. But again, just trying to keep things light, quick. I'm not trying to bog you down with too much information. And we could have duplicated all that again and kind of done it that way, but. And this gives you it gives you an idea where your eyeball should kind of go too. You know, you got these kind of spots in the corners, and you're kind of leading around, this whole thing. And again, this isn't taking very long. This isn't crazy what I'm doing. It's not labor intensive, but sometimes it really helps to know these kind of techniques, especially when you're building out these geometric shapes. I'm not really well known for this. It's not something I do a lot, but it has come in handy when I've had to design like a simple, maybe a t-shirt design, a one-color t-shirt design where they want a really complicated image, but they don't necessarily have like a theme they want to use. And so sometimes that really helps because, it's just a fun design. It's not a shape of an animal. It's nothing offensive. And sometimes that's all they want is just something interesting to look at. So it can come in handy, and you can use it for a lot of different things. I have a huge comprehensive collection of these I've created over 10 years, and I used to sell them on Big Cartel. I'm not selling them anymore there. I'm going to be switching over to a Creative Market account where I sell fun goods and little things, and I'll be giving away a few things too. And if you want this file, feel free to email me. I'll send it over to you. I'm perfectly happy with doing that. I want people to experience it, look at it, pick it apart. That way you have a little bit of ownership of it, and you can kind of see it too. That way you're not just watching this and going, oh well, I wish I could see it. I want you to be able to actually feel it and touch it and look at it and pull it apart and use it for whatever you want to. These are just fun little vectors we're creating. We're not it's not about money. It's about just sharing knowledge. And if you have a different way of doing things, then by all means come and tell me. Tell me how you would do it, or if I'm doing something silly that you think is not appropriate or not something that you think is worthwhile. Tell me that too. I'm okay. I've been doing this for a while. I've heard it all. So as you can see, when I do this, when I want to select all the strokes, this is sometimes the bad thing about clipping masks, and I hide all of them, this shape is still here. And this is because this shape is no fill and no stroke, and this is the actual shape that's inside of here that we're using for a clipping mask. So just keep that in mind. It will select all this stuff individually in here as long as you have it expanded and it's nothing that's being used to blend, but just keep that in mind. So I'm liking the way this is looking. It's, maybe you could put their logo right here. Let's say it's a t-shirt design or an advertising design for some aerospace company or something. There's a lot of places you can do that. And let's say they wanted their logo bigger, and you're like, man, I don't know where to put it. I can't put it here. I can't put it there. Try to make it as clean as possible. And this is one technique you can use to make it clean, which is just make a shape. Boop, like this, and integrate it into it. So let's say that's where the logo would be, and this is where the subtext would be. So we're going to highlight this, make sure it's all the same, and let's say it's District North, and we're going to slide this out. And we'll use a simple font. Let's say this guy. Object. We'll keep it the way that it is. Shrink this guy down a little bit. Go up to type. Change case. Uppercase. Really super helpful if you didn't know that already. One thing you want to do is when you're doing type and this type of mono line, you want to make sure that the type kind of works with it, whether it's, oops, sorry about that zoom. You want to make sure that these lines are the same thickness, or at least very close. You don't want it to stand out too much, but you also don't want it to dissolve in there. So I'm going to put it right about here, and I'm going to increase the tracking. Let's say right about there, and we're going to slide this down and say Geo Pattern, and shrink this guy a little bit too. And do you see how you can easily put their logo into it and incorporate it in a way that makes sense? I've found that some people just put it on top like that, and it gets very confusing, or maybe they'll copy paste behind it and they'll make a white stroke. and it'll kind of cut through things, and it doesn't really work. So just make sure that you're trying to keep things really simple and clear, especially if you're doing this for a client. You know, I really love being able to do this, and you know, I'm doing it on white, but realistically this looks phenomenally nice on black. So let's say we wanted to do that. I'm going to hide all this stuff that we just put in, and let's see what we can do. X front, and I'm going to actually put it on its own layer. Hide. Alright, so let's see here. Let's add some extra little elements in here. And we're going to come in here with the old pen tool. I don't know, let's just play around. Group, and I'm going to round these. That. Group again. Copy paste. Rotate. Group. And you know, there's a nice thing about it too, is if you're grouping these things, so you know, all these X's are grouped together, so it's a full square. And if I hit my alignment tools, it's going to align perfectly in there. But let's say I didn't group them together, and this is something that you might run into where, you know, let's say these are grouped, which is fine, but these aren't, and you go ahead and you know, you're basically connecting these. Well, let's say like this. So let's say I want to align these. They're not going to align properly. You're going to basically move them to the center. So, you know, keep that in mind when you're designing these, to always make sure that you're just kind of grouping everything together. And I kind of like that. It was a little mistake, but I liked it. So, you know, this is starting to feel kind of like a Midwestern thing. It's I think it looks cool and it's fun. But now that this outside's kind of done, I kind of want to do something in here, and I'm thinking of doing you know, kind of some repeating patterns and using the clipping mask like I did on the outside. So we're gonna do these same effects. So I'm gonna copy back, and what I want to do so I can make sure this is all kind of connected is, let me move it out like that. And the nice thing about doing, you know, different things like this, where I'm kind of cutting into here, is that it creates dimensionality, and that's realistically what you want in these things. You want to, excuse me, you want to be able to see that this circle is in front of this square, that this shape is behind this, and that dimensionality and contrast is what makes it unique, in my opinion. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways to do that. There's a lot of different ways to doing all this. Like, let's say you didn't like the fact that it had those. Just disappear all those shapes, and now you have this big mess, right? This doesn't look very good. It's just a mishmash of a bunch of stuff. And so you don't want that. You want it to create something that works well together. And we haven't taken a ton of time to do this, so it's not as if this is really complicated, but it does take time to kind of learn the techniques that are going to make you successful while doing this. Yeah, I don't want to do that. Okay, so I want to create some lines in here to create some kind of depth going inside of this circle. Copy front. I'm going to make this big. And then I'm going to change the color of this just so you can see what it looks like, and it'll be a little bit easier for you to understand what I'm about to do. So copy behind, and I'm going to drag this out of that frame, and I'm going to select both of these, and if you hit Option Command B, or actually I think this is a hotkey just for me, so let me just go ahead and show you the menu command. You're going to go to Object Blend, Blending Options. You're going to open this up, and it's going to tell you a bunch of different things in here. What we want is steps, not color. And this will be able to tell us how many steps, or how many steps does it get from this shape to this shape. So it's going to increase. And you'll see if I, whoops, I got to hit the preview. And you'll see what happens. You can increase it a lot, a little, You can change things around. It's really, really helpful. I use it a ton. I wish the functionality was a little bit better. I wish they kind of revamped a few of these things in newer versions of Illustrator, but it still works really great. It's powerful. You can change a bunch of things in here. Distance, color. It's great for blending sometimes if you want to blend some stuff. Good for typography. So learn that. It's very useful. So okay, so now we have this shape, and I want to put it inside. So let me select all of that, and I want to put it inside. Let's see here. Exit front 3. I want to put it inside this. So what I'm going to do is copy the front and do the same thing. Select this, and then Command 7, and that's going to create a clipping mask. Now, because these are different sizes, what we want to do is, and the nice thing is, let's say, let's change this to this size, and change this to this size, but we're going to increase it just a couple scooches. I'm going to scooch it up like this. And delete. All right, now we have this clipping mask. We're going to exit, and then we're going to paste in front by Command F. Now, do you see how this dimensionality completely changed in here? And I'm not sure I love it, but at least you understand how to create this effect, and you understand how it works. And what I would probably do from here is, let's see, well, whoops. If you double click on it, it'll isolate it, and this is really, really helpful, especially when you're working with stuff like this. And you can kind of just work within your object here. Now, this stuff you gotta kind of drill down here, figure out what's going on. But I would say, you know, I don't know if I love. Let me look at it again. I don't know if I love that it's a different shape. Oops. I'm just trying to find like the best way of doing it. Fine. And this is sometimes the point. And you can do little things like over here underneath the stroke palette, you can change it to a dash maybe. That can bring up a different, you know, effect if that's what you're going for. And you have all these fun features that you can change in here. Play with those. They're a lot of fun to increase the gap and the shape, and you can round the edges and do all this kind of funky stuff. I'm not going to do any of that. I don't think it kind of works with this whole aesthetic that I'm doing, which is, I don't know, it's starting to feel kind of Midwestern slash, I don't know, Fallout type of thing going on. But I'm just having fun. I'm not overthinking it. You know, I'm sure there's design purists out there that are upset with, you know, it's some sort of terminology that I'm not using, but just have fun. Don't overthink things. Sometimes it's just interesting just to have fun. But yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about those lines. I thought I'd be a little bit more excited about it. Not really in love with it. And you can play around, move things around. Ooh, I like that a little bit more. And, you know, a lot of my work is happy accidents. You know, as Bob Ross used to say, happy accidents. I grew up watching Bob Ross and his style of painting. And I really enjoyed it, and I always kind of took those lessons with me wherever I went. There. And let's see here. These are all together. Let's see what I can do in the center here. So we're going to take the polygon and let's say 8. We'll make it octagon. And again, just using simple shapes. And we're layering and figuring out what looks good and what doesn't look good. And it all comes down to how much time you want to spend on this. If you were done 15 steps ago, then awesome. You know, you could sell that. You could sell that on Etsy or somewhere on a pillow, and maybe put a little fox in here. It's all just what you want to come up with. I'm not loving the octagon shape. That looks kind of cool. Decrease that a little bit. You know, and I like maybe adding some extra added effects. So, you know, you can come in here and use the polygon tool again, double click, and I want it to be a triangle. So I'm going to use 3 sides, rotate. And the nice thing about this, again, aligning to artboard, is that if you want it to be exactly aligned with all of this, just hit this guy, and now you're perfectly aligned, and you can use the scale up. I'm going to bring this back a little bit. Move that up a scooch. And do the same thing. Copy in front, rotate, whoops, rotate, slide over here. And group these 2 guys, group, copy in front, rotate again, align, align. There. You know, now we're getting to like science fiction-y. I don't love how these aren't aligned perfectly. And you can change that if you wanted to. And you can also change, you know, maybe it's not monospace. Maybe that's not what you want to do. And you kind of want to change things up and do different contrast, more high contrast images, which is, you know, you're still using these shapes, but let's say instead of doing that, you're switching it up. You know, and you can do black in here, you know. It all comes down to how creative and how much time you want to spend on it. You can get them to be very, very detailed or not detailed at all. So let's say you wanted, let's do it, you know, in real life. If you wanted to experiment, you're like, hey, I want to know how to do that. Let's say you want these triangles to be perfect with this triangle. And you can do it a few different ways. You could take this shape, this outward shape, copy in front, slide it on down so it's exactly lined up, and then go ahead and you can cut out what you didn't want in there anymore. So just take another shape, select both of them, and then subtract, and you can delete that, copy in front, delete that, and then you have a perfect shape that fits within that. And that's just one quick way of doing it. That's a little bit different of a technique. And do the same thing. I like that a little bit more. Since everything is kind of lined up, it does make more sense that these line up. And then we'll copy in front, rotate, and then delete those guys. You know, and maybe you're, I don't know, you could make these as coloring books. There's a lot of different things you could do, and I don't want to ever hinder anyone's creativity when it comes to this type of work, where the geometric designs might be kind of a mystery at you at first, but after a while you'll get it down really quickly. It's not, you know, rocket science. It's really just what do you personally like and how quickly can you create it. And I like that. And again, I'm using all the same technique: copy in front, pasting, repeating shapes. You know, you could come in here and expand this all out, and then use the paint bucket or the live paint bucket to like fill in these colors. Let's say you could change them all around and change them to whatever you wanted. There's a lot of different ways you can go with this. So don't feel like anything that I say or do is the only way of doing it. I'm certainly not saying that myself. Behind. It's looking a little weird if I do that. So I'm actually gonna bring those in like that. Stroke, make sure that's at 3. All those are at 3. Oh, there we go. And 3. So now everything's exactly the same. Yeah, I mean it was pretty quick and it didn't take too long. And if you select the whole thing, we're gonna copy that in front. I'm gonna put this right here. You're gonna come up here to the old object, and we're gonna go expand appearance. And I actually do this a couple times for me, just because I've always done it that way. I think it comes from me being working at a screen printing digital sublimation place where everything needed to be expanded, and it was just drilled into my head that it needed to be expanded over and over and over again, multiple times, to make sure that fonts and everything worked out. Now the nice thing about this is that it creates, and let me show you what I did there. So I basically expanded it all out, and then what I'm doing here is I'm just selecting the black, and I'm going to select all the black, and I'm going to hit Command 3, and it's going to make it disappear. But what's going to be left is the stuff that's in between all that after I had used the trim button. And this is stuff that either is artifacts that are kind of left over, or it's stuff that was used in the clipping mask and doesn't have a fill or stroke. Now the nice thing about this is that I can come in here and select all the white, and I can turn it into a color. Let's see. That color. And I can use this as another design. And this is the opposite. Let me just drag it over here and delete anything that's left over. And then that's that. And now I have 2 of these kind of cool little things that are kind of different. They're not perfect. I think I'd probably change a few things. Let's make this white so it shows up on this nice background. And make this white as well. Whoops. Out selecting the background. So now we have, these kind of 2 cool shapes. I don't love these, when you flip it, I don't love how this looks, these kind of out things, so I think I'd actually delete them. Boom, like that. And now you have these cool, unique things that no one else on Earth has those. You didn't copy them from anywhere. They're yours to use whatever you want, and you can use them on a bunch of different projects. If you'd like this file, please feel free to email me. I'd love talking to you. Suggest anything you'd like me to design, or you'd like to see more of, or maybe you'd like to see another video like this. Please feel free to talk to me. I do love doing this. It's a lot of fun, and I'm glad that I'm back doing it again. And the fun thing about this stuff is that it really can be used for a lot of different things. Don't just think that it needs to be, coloring books or t-shirt designs. It can be used for digital marketing or creating different background elements, or sometimes this is the whole design. You don't want to use stuff like this for a logo. It's really complicated, even though a client might like it. So just keep that in mind. It's probably not going to stand out as far as a logo. Plus, these are all really thin lines. The nice thing about this and keeping an unedited version is that you can increase the stroke, decrease the stroke. Let's say, client really wanted it thin, and you could kind of play around with what it looks like. I mean, you could have so much fun with this. So just realize that, don't take yourself too seriously. Have fun, and I'm always here if you want to chit-chat. Well, that's it. Thanks for watching my video and following along with me and having a good time. Hopefully you learned some fun little tips and tricks along the way that you can use in your next project. Please like and subscribe and all that fun stuff. I honestly, if you have anything you'd like to see from me or anything you want to see me do more of, please share in the comments below and I will actually get back to you. I'm the one that checks it. So I don't have an assistant that does that for me. But please feel free to email me if you'd like this vector. I will actually, if you send me an email, I'll actually send it to you. And I've done this in the past. Please feel free to shoot me an email or chit chat with me about anything. Thanks. Bye.